They waited for you to defend yourself. They waited for you to justify your silence, to clarify your choices, to beg for understanding. But something changed. You stopped explaining. And that was the moment everything shifted, because they were prepared for your words. They were prepared for your paragraphs, your emotional essays, your long nights of trying to be understood. They were ready for your trembling voice, your careful reasoning, your desperate attempts to make them see your heart. They were not prepared for your quiet. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought if you stopped talking, you had nothing left to say. But what they didn't understand is this. When you stopped explaining, you stopped shrinking. At first, they expected you to chase them with reasons. They expected you to stand in front of their accusations and say, "Let me explain." They expected you to untangle every misunderstanding, to defend your boundaries, to soften your truth so it wouldn't offend them. They thought you would stay in the courtroom of their opinions forever, arguing your innocence, because that's who you used to be. You used to carry evidence in your chest. You used to rehearse conversations in the shower. You used to lie awake at night thinking, maybe if I say it differently, maybe if I find the right words, they'll finally understand. You tried. God, you tried. You explained your exhaustion. You explained your pain. You explained your silence. You explained your growth. You explained why you couldn't keep giving. You explained why you needed space. You explained why you were changing. And every time you explained, they twisted it. They minimized it. They mocked it. They weaponized it. Did they ever truly want to understand you? Or did they just want control? Because the truth is, people who want to understand you don't require a performance. They listen, but they didn't listen. They waited for you to finish so they could speak again. And one day something inside you snapped. Not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like a thread finally giving up after being pulled too many times. You got tired of defending your character, tired of translating your boundaries, tired of shrinking your truth to fit their comfort, so you stopped explaining, and that's when the transformation began. It didn't happen overnight. At first, the silence felt strange, unnatural, almost dangerous. You would feel the urge to clarify, the reflex to defend yourself, the instinct to send that long message, to make that call, to fix the misunderstanding, but you resisted. You let the silence sit, and in that silence, you heard something you hadn't heard in years. Yourself. You heard your own heartbeat without interruption. You heard your own intuition without their noise drowning it out. You realized something powerful. Not everything deserves an explanation. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Not everyone deserves to understand your next move. You stopped narrating your life for an audience that was committed to misunderstanding you. And slowly, your spine straightened. You began to walk differently. You began to choose differently. You began to speak less, but mean more. Like a storm gathering strength in the distance, you were no longer scattered lightning trying to strike everywhere at once. You were focused, grounded, unbothered. They noticed. Oh, they noticed. At first, they were confused. Why aren't you responding? Why aren't you defending yourself? Why don't you care? They mistook your silence for surrender. But what they didn't understand is that silence can be power. When you stopped explaining, you stopped giving them control over the narrative. You no longer handed them the script. You no longer gave them backstage passes to your thoughts. And that scared them, because they were used to your emotional transparency. They were used to you trying to fix everything. They were used to you chasing peace while they chased chaos. But now you were calm, too calm. Did they really think you'd stay desperate forever? Did they really believe you would always beg to be understood? No, you evolved, and evolution doesn't announce itself. It just happens, like a phoenix that stops apologizing for the fire it needed to survive. Here's what they never realized. Every time you explained yourself, you were asking for permission. Permission to feel, permission to change, permission to outgrow them. And when you stopped explaining, you stopped asking. You didn't need their approval to become who you were meant to be. You didn't need them to agree with your boundaries. You didn't need them to validate your pain, because your pain was real. Your growth was real. Your transformation was real, even if they refused to see it. And that's when the power shifted. You see, when you no longer try to convince someone of your worth, you reclaim it. When you no longer argue for your boundaries, you embody them. When you no longer explain your silence becomes a message. And what does it say? It says, I know who I am. It says, I don't need to prove it. It says, Believe what you want, because I'm done performing. They began to feel it, that distance, that detachment, that unshakable calm, and suddenly the roles reversed. Now they were the ones explaining. Now they were the ones over-justifying. Now they were the ones trying to decode you. Why are you different? What happened to you? Who do you think you are? And you? You smiled, because you know something they don't. Growth is quiet. Confidence doesn't argue. Strength doesn't beg. You stopped explaining because you finally understood something profound. If someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no explanation will ever be enough. So why exhaust yourself? Why drain your spirit? Why bleed words for people who refuse to listen? You chose peace, and peace does not need to shout. But let's be honest, it hurt at first. There were moments you doubted yourself, moments when their silence felt like rejection, moments when their accusations echoed in your head, moments when you wondered, am I being too cold, too distant, too proud? But then you remembered the nights you cried trying to be understood. You remembered the emotional labor, the mental gymnastics, the self-betrayal. You remembered how small you felt explaining basic respect. And something inside you hardened, not in bitterness, but in clarity. You realized that explaining yourself to the wrong people is a form of self-abandonment. So you stopped abandoning yourself, and that was your rebirth. This is where they underestimated you. They thought your kindness was weakness. They thought your explanations were insecurity. They thought your patience meant you'd tolerate anything. But what they didn't see was the warrior behind the softness, the lion behind the calm, the fire behind the silence. You didn't stop explaining because you gave up. You stopped explaining because you leveled up. You understood that not every battle deserves your energy. You understood that some people are not confused. They are committed to misunderstanding you because it benefits them. And when you saw that clearly, you withdrew your participation. That's power. That's mastery. That's control. You began to move like royalty, not loud, not arrogant, not dramatic, just certain of your path, certain of your values, certain of your worth. You stopped oversharing your dreams. You stopped defending your decisions. You stopped clarifying your boundaries.